And so what I can do now is bring this line around like so. And I can bring this one around the back. That. Join it. Bring this like that. Now, because I'm having this kind of space develop right here, it poses kind of an interesting design problem because this is not really a spiral shape. So I'm going to have to probably bring this around and create some sort of leaf type pattern right there. So I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit of a leaf right here. And then bring this around. And now what I can do there is something either angular coming up, or I could continue and try and make a spiral out of it. Now my leaning is probably to do something a little bit angular. It doesn't really match the stuff around it, but it's actually kind of visually nice to have something that's a little bit different. Probably do some sort of leaf type of thing right there. It's a little tricky. Maybe add some perspective. So let's do this. And so basically it loops over on itself like that. Maybe not the prettiest thing in the world, but it does help give a little depth, which is what I was after. Now we have this thing here where this is going under, so the next thing to do is bring this around and create some sort of very small spiral on the end of it. And I want to make sure that I don't accidentally go over this line right here, because that'll mess up the depth, and that's why I'm creating a small spiral. The other part is that, just visually speaking, if you look at the whole pattern, if we did something larger there, it would probably stand out too much. We don't want to take away the visual impact from what's going to come around here. So I'm going to go ahead and continue the spiral. And another thing about spirals is, you notice when I did this part, I went around. When I complete the spiral, I always start from the center, because that's how you know where you're going to end it. If you continue the line around, it is much harder to know how to do a spiral, because you're gonna lose the dimensions. If you start in the center, then you always know sort of where you're ending. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring this around real thin. Stop right there, and then reposition. And meet the lines up. That is one of the things that's hardest to do, is to get lines where you start far away from it and you have to sync up. That takes a lot of practice and a lot of time. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this under. And what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to break this overlapping line into two pieces. And the reason why is that this doesn't really have room for a spiral. Pretty much this needs to end right there. I'm trying not to have too much overlap, because when I do fill, it'll look messy. So what I'm going to do to help, again, keep the depth going is I'm going to start the termination of that line right there underneath of here. Bring it around. Slightly fatter and wider, like that. And see how you get this nice visual continuation there. And what I'm going to do is bring this in a V. Now this is a little tricky because you've got to leave enough of a V that you can see it. But you notice that this line comes up at a slight angle, so I'm going to have to reroute that line just a little bit, very carefully, like that. So now this comes around. So I'm continuing this line underneath it here, and I think I'm going to go ahead and have it do another loop down here. And again, what I'm doing is I'm visualizing where this is going to go, and I'm going to start at the farthest part and bring it around. And I got to watch out for that bell seam because it's really, really easy to slip on. And notice how I brought that around, connected it. Now what I think I'm going to do is, instead of a rounded spiral, I'm just going to bring it to a point. And you can do that in certain places, especially if it's the end of something long like this, where there's a nice long line. And in fact, if I was maybe in a different spot on the horn, I guess I could still do it. I might bring this around and even overlap one more time. Let's go ahead and try that and see what that looks like. Again, this is just in a constant state of development. There's no pre-planning other than just having experience to know what might look okay. It sometimes looks kind of crummy, but hopefully most of it, when you look at it, you don't notice the parts that are less attractive. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and bring this around and bring it up and around, and maybe one more spiral there. And we're going right for the bell seam, which is going to be fun, and it may slip. So one way approaching the bell seam is to go slow. And you'll notice that as I've been going along here, sometimes I go pretty fast, but right here I'm going to go super slow. Because I do not want to slip right there. You never want to slip, but sometimes you can't help it. Alright, right there, I felt it made even a little noise and went click. And that's because I'm right on top of solder. Now if I had been going faster, the engraver would have slipped right probably into my stomach. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and continue this around nice and slow. And I'm hitting the solder joint there. Sometimes this happens where you hit a point and the engraver doesn't want to move forward, it just wants to sink in. So the only way to get past that is to start at the end of your stroke, like in this case I'm doing a loop, bring it around, and meet up with the point where it started to sink. Sometimes you get a little burr like that. That's how you deal with that. I'm going to bring this around and create a little leaf because this line is getting pretty gangly, and I don't want it to be too string-like. I'm going to go ahead and bring this around. And again, hit a little point right there where the engraver wanted to kind of sink in. So you have to really pay attention to when that starts to happen and stop. Because classic mistake that a lot of young engravers make is that they don't understand the depth of the brass or basically the tenseness of the brass, and they will sink deeper and deeper and hope then they can cut their way out by going forward, which you can't. The minute it starts to sink like that, you have to quit and go the other direction and clean this spot up. So I'm going to go right over the top of the seam, and again I feel it wanting to slip, but I'm going to continue this over like so. And so now you can see this whole thing where we've created a lot of texture and depth in this area.